Most of us hate, not most of us, every single one of us hate to be told what to do. We need to feel ownership over every decision that we make. So stories have a way of just saying, look, this is my experience, which allows people to go, okay, all right, maybe, yeah, okay.
So hi, Hannah.
Hi, Maria.
How are you?
Good to see you. Good. And you?
I love the flowers that you have there.
Well, I thought it's coming up to Easter. I was going to treat myself.
Yeah, we've learned a lot since the beginning of the year about diversity, inclusion, and equity and belonging. And many people have come to us, right, asking questions that we didn't have answers to in the landing page or in the conversations. So we thought, how about talking about them?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, lots of people have said, asked us lots of questions about how storytelling could help them, and they've also questioned how it perhaps couldn't help them. So yeah, we thought it'd be a great opportunity to just maybe debunk some myths and just share our findings.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to start with with the myths that are in storytelling. And I love the first one that we prepared because it's the one that I think comes up the most. And it's storytelling is not business-like.
Yeah.
And yeah. I can see why they think that, right? Because it's like when we're children, we tell a lot of stories and we understand all the, my children know all the fairy tales and I don't have to even say it. They know word by word what the book says. But then when we start in the workforce, it's all of a sudden kind of forbidden to talk about stories or tell stories, use stories. What do you think? What is your experience, Hannah?
So yeah, I totally agree. There is this myth that storytelling is too soft, and it's just not what we need in business right now. Right now, what we need is facts and sharing data and I totally agree. That's exactly what we're missing is, not enough facts and data. And the thing is, stories are literally that. They're stories, are facts, wrapped in context, delivered with emotion. And it's important to think about the word emotion because every single decision that we take is made in our limbic brain, our emotional brain. So if we're wanting to influence and change and get people to be on our side and understand what we're actually trying to implement, then we need to be talking to people on an emotional level. And that's the great thing about stories, is that it allows us to really understand in a way that a PowerPoint presentation just doesn't do it.
Yeah.
We don't remember stuff in PowerPoint. When we can't get emotionally connected to a PowerPoint presentation. But yeah, that's what people tend to do. And I'm not saying that PowerPoint's wrong. There are lots of different ways of communicating. It's just that there are always alternatives as well.
And one of the things that happened, I've used many presentations and I've really experienced firsthand what happens when we just use, business words and facts and figures. When I was at the customer in 2011, I was at Perkins in the UK, and my presentation was after lunch. We were like 20 in the room, 8 of the customer side, and one of them I could see him, he was just struggling not to close his eyes. And I'm like, oh my God, am I boring? He didn't care that much, and he was tired. And I totally get it. How many hundreds of slides do we see every day?
I think that's a really key word you picked up. He didn't care. And, and this is true. We don't care about things until we know that the person cares about what they're saying. And so sharing a story really enables people to understand why this is important for you as an individual, or what's led you to this path. And it's in that moment where you go, oh, okay, this is interesting. I can see why this person's here and why they want to share it. I now want to listen.
Yes.
And I think, storytelling is fantastic at getting people on board and caring. And I think that's a vital thing. But it's interesting, yesterday when I was in the car, I was on my way to a concert with my son, and I was listening to a podcast. I think it was called The Infinitive Monkey Cage. I know it's very strange, but it's a great podcast. And the subject was how to get away with a perfect murder. Okay, don't judge me on my interests. But there was a really interesting point. There was a psychologist, forensic psychologist, was talking about false memories as well. And so she was saying that in witness statements, for example, it's really easy to implant different things to create a false memory into different people, which is obviously very important for court. And there was an experiment that she did. And at the end of the experiment, 77% of the people actually believed they committed a crime, even though they absolutely didn't. And so I think, what's really interesting is the brain, she was explaining that the brain is always needing constant consistency of narrative to influence and change the way people think. Now, I'm not saying that storytelling is manipulative or influential like that at all, but it goes to show that the brain works that way. And so, if we really do want to make some real deep cultural change, then storytelling is definitely worth considering, for sure.
The second one is also something that many people come to us saying, hey, not everyone is a storyteller. When we are children, again, it's all about stories, right? It's all about what our parents say we should do, we shouldn't do, and why, we should go to the school every day and so on, no? So I think we tell stories and we are storytellers naturally. And it's just this coming to this workforce, coming to this, stepping into a business place where we feel displaced, talking about stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And yet storytelling is what we all do naturally when we're together. If you're with your family at Christmas, what's everyone doing? They're all sharing stories. Yeah, it's the most humane way of connecting and understanding people, and really understanding what's going on for them. There was some research done by this with a professor called Robin Dunbar. And he sent out students to listen to what people were talking about when they were together. And he discovered that 65% of the time we're gossiping. Yeah. Now, I can't think of a single human I know that's never gossiped. Yeah. So, and what's gossip? Gossip is literally storytelling. That's all it is. It's storytelling. The only difference is in business is it's storytelling, but with a purpose.
When we meet teams and customers and so on after work, it's all about storytelling. And people are willing to sacrifice, an afternoon and evening or go travel somewhere and be 2 days intensively with people because of this after work time, and there has to be something in it.
Yeah,
and I think it has to do with stories.
Yeah, absolutely,
because it will create the connection that you cannot create with all these different big words like innovation, diversity, enhanced possibilities. I heard an interview last Friday with a DI advocate working in recruiting, and she says we're using words we don't share the definition for. One example, I work a lot in innovation because I'm an innovation coach in a company, and there is a colleague of mine, and once we were talking about the word innovation, and I said, well, what is innovation for you? He says, innovation is something, a product, a service, that it shows success in the market. And he says, what is it for you? And I'm like, innovation for me is anything that is new and is useful. And we, all of a sudden, we realize we're talking about very, very, very different things. Because for me, it would be like going, driving home in a different path, using a different path, you know, that is more effective. But for him, that's not innovation.
No. Yeah, it's so true. And it happens all the time. And when I'm training, sometimes I use this question of, I want everyone in your mind's eye to think of an elephant in the room next to you. Okay, that's all I say. So you'd imagine when I ask 6 people, I'm going to get the same thing, but I don't. Every single time there is a different answer. Some people see a huge gray elephant with tusks. Others see a cartoony pink elephant that's flying like Dumbo, because we'll only ever create the thoughts of what our own experience has been. So if our experience has been with an elephant just through the TV, for example, then yeah, you're more likely to think of an elephant as Dumbo. If you've actually had the luxury of, I don't know, going on safari and seeing a real life elephant, then you're going to have a very, very different image of what an elephant is. And one of the things that stories does do, because stories are so visual, it allows everyone to be on the same page. And there is a lot less confused ideas. So it's much, if you want to get, something that's really complex out there, sometimes a simple story is the easiest way to break through that complexity. Yeah, the woman that you were talking about has a really valid point. We need to get clear on vocabulary, but actually, if we just tell a story, done.
All right, let's run into the third one that I love. I think this is one of my favorites. We don't have time for stories.
So yeah, it's true. Most of us have this image of a story being very, very long, and it's a luxury to add in a story. And stories don't need to be long. I think that's really important. You can tell a really, really effective story in 30 seconds. It does, you can go from 30 seconds to, I think if you're going beyond 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, then yeah, maybe you should. But if you've got a really powerful story that really makes the point, then you've already got everyone on board, and the rest of the information that you need to give, you don't actually need to focus on that as much as making the point with the story, because I think you've already got people on board. If you're not telling that story, if you're not getting people engaged, then you're having to repeat your message over and over and over again, right? So that is not saving time. Yeah, so because you're going to have to keep calling meetings because it's still not implemented, because people still don't get it. A few years ago, I was working with a TV station, sports TV station, and one of the delegates there, she got in contact with me after the storytelling training, and she said, I just want to thank you. She said something has just completely clicked. They had an issue with a sports star, and because of a particular issue, they had to make sure that there was a clause in every single person's contract. So whenever they spoke to a sports person, the presenters would need them to get the sports person to sign this contract. And the uptake of that was not very high. So she kept calling them saying, look, because she was the lawyer, I need you to make sure that the sports people sign. This is really important to the business, really important. And she was just not having any effect. And then after the storytelling training, she used a story of the reason why it's important, because it turned out that, I can't remember all the details, but it turned out that this one particular sports interaction caused the company to be sued for about 5 million euros. And so, this was an important thing. And when she explained that this is why we're doing it, suddenly the uptake of getting everyone to sign was enormous. And I think, one of the key things is the why. We need to care, and we need to know why.
And the fourth myth that we want to tackle today has a little bit to do with this, with the fact of it's time, right? Like we don't have time. The fourth one is we're done talking. We've talked so much, and especially with the subject of storytelling. I was interviewing a person, a DEI manager last week, and he says, we've done talking, we understand the problems, so we don't need storytelling. Now we need to act, we need to roll out the program, and it's about acting now. What do you think?
So, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that people say we've done talking, but if you're not got everyone on board, because we talked about I don't care and why should I? If you haven't got everyone on board, that action isn't going to happen. And so, for example, in one of the things that's interesting is in the University of Wisconsin, they did some experiments on really active storytelling in certain areas. And they found that he made a huge impact on interpersonal relationships, on empathy, and a sense of connectedness. And, we're talking about inclusion. One of the things you need to take action is psychological security, psychological safety. And so without that, you haven't got it. So storytelling actually creates that environment. If you want to really make behavioral changes in inclusion, people need to, it is about really changing the way they are, on a long-term, deeper culture change. And so if you've created an environment where storytelling is the norm, where people feel comfortable to share their stories, people are communicating with stories, so with real life examples, then that's taking action.
I don't know what exactly he means by action, but I asked him about one example, and you've told me these story circles. People meet inside companies, like 5-10 people, and they share their story, and it's very there's no structure in these meetings other than you give them the tool as to what happened to you, what happened, what was the change, and how did you have a choice to be a different person or something like that. This is just the guidance that you give them, and all of a sudden you have people understanding each other and working better together. Even like people that don't understand each other or that can't stand each other, all of a sudden they see, oh, there's a human being behind him, I'm gonna help him.
Yeah.
So when he says, when I talked to this person about this, he was like, oh, I think that sounds very interesting as a measure.
With inclusion, it is about belonging, and it's much easier to feel you belong when you feel that your opinion, your experience especially is valid, is worth knowing, is worth sharing, and that it's. And the wonderful thing about stories I always love is that a lot of us, pretty much all of us, have this fear that we're the only one. Like we're the only one that's feeling insecure. We're the only one that's lacking confidence. We're the only one that's, worried. And actually, when you share stories, you suddenly realize that every single human in that room has experienced exactly what you have. Maybe not right now in that moment, but they have. And so the amount of empathy that is created just in that 10 minutes of sharing stories is incredible.
Incredible,
yeah. I mean, I've personally been, and this is why I love my job. I've personally witnessed so many beautiful transitions, going from hatred to understanding, going from confusion to understanding, and just the empathy. I've been lucky enough to witness. It's just beautiful.
I'm wondering if you want to share one of those stories, because you've kind of said the promise of these transformations that you've experienced at work. Is there any particular thing that you have in mind you want to share?
So there is one, and it's just always it will never ever leave my heart. And I was running this training, and it was in the room there were people from about 16 different countries, everywhere from America to China, Japan, Australia. And at the beginning, I had everyone just introduce themselves, tell me a little bit about themselves, where they're from. And we got to one woman, she was over here, and she was from, she was American, and she introduced herself as a Jewish American. That's fine, and told us about herself. Then they're over here. There was a girl that was from Palestine, obviously a Muslim from Palestine. And the moment that they sort of knew who they each were, you could have cut the atmosphere with a knife. It was quite, oof, okay, this is going to be interesting. So throughout the sessions that we had, I think it was with them over 5 sessions, I perhaps purposefully sometimes got them in groups together where they would have to share stories about their, and, you know, they weren't personal, they weren't specific stories. They were more like, you know, share a moment of success, or, you know, when have you seen a great leader at work, or things like that. But on the very final session, they came together and hugged each other, and they saw, and, you know, and they just said thank you. And they, you know, they started off as enemies, even though they didn't even know each other. And yet at the end, after sharing stories, they saw each other as humans. I actually took a photo of the two of them because it was one of the most beautiful moments, just seeing those two come together and hug. Yeah.
Oh,
so stories,
yeah.
When people say to me, oh, but storytelling, you know, it's just so, storytelling is powerful.
Yes. You
So
know that.
I know, I've seen it happen. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, thank you. That's a beautiful story. Let's go to the final myth that we want to debunk today. It's about storytelling is only for speakers. We just, you know, normal people in the structures, in the normal organizations, we don't need storytelling. It's just, you know, the CEO or the CE, whatever, that need to go out to different clients, or that need to explain things to their organization. Those need that, but the rest don't. What do you think about that, Hannah?
You know, and everyone in business, wherever you are, whether you're, you know, the CEO or the financial manager, or, you know, someone else in the team, everyone needs to share ideas that people get on board with, that people understand. So, you know, storytelling should be just a general part of the way that we communicate. Most of us hate, not most of us, every single one of us hate to be told what to do. Everyone, right? You know, if I told you to do something, then you'd be like reluctant to do it, because we need to feel ownership over every decision that we make, right? And so stories have a way of just saying, look, this is my experience. So it's much of an open way of saying, this is my experience and it worked, which allows people to go, okay, all right, maybe, yeah, okay.
All right, that was really cool. I learned a couple of things here.
That's why I love our conversations, because there's always so much more to learn from, you know, from each other, from other people, and why I think, you know, this is exciting time that we've decided to do this, that we're going to do more of these, but each time invite specialists from anything, you know, people to do with inclusion, and learn from them, because I think the more we can share and learn from each other can only make a richer environment. And
is there anything you want to finish up with, Hannah?
Just to say, yeah, if there's anything that we've said that you agree with, disagree with, or maybe you've got other examples, you know, where you've seen storytelling as being used as a powerful communication tool, it'd be great. You know, we're really open to learning from different people, and, you know, especially if you're working in inclusion, it would be great to hear some of your stories too.
Yeah, 100%. That's actually a byproduct that I didn't expect, that when I'm sharing stories now in LinkedIn a lot, and many people come to me now and say, hey, there's a story you want to like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, this is great. Yeah, share your stories with us. We really are story collectors, and we love to hear what your experience has been.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria, and I look forward to our next conversation.